Welcome. I am Dr. Patrice Berry, licensed psychologist, and here I share educational information on mental health topics. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and so I am supporting. And let me know in the comments once you all can see me. It looks like there are people here. Let me know where you are watching from. This stream, I'm going to make sure to put the comments up. So when I respond to a comment, I'm going to make sure to put it up so that people on replay can see everything. This has been a bit of a journey watching the Letecia Stauch trial, and I am so glad that Gannon did get justice. And we are going to watch the judge. The judge did a phenomenal job when he spoke back to Letecia today. Hey, Izzy from California. Because Nina, before I even started the stream, Nina was saying that she thought that Dr. Lewis was going to be the reason that Letecia was going to walk, and no. So the jury was not hung. The jury deliberated for about 7 hours. So they started deliberations on Friday and they concluded on Monday. I watched The Lawyer You Know. I watched his stream of the verdict. I was not able to go live yesterday. I have a full-time private practice. And so there were some questions that I have, and I did want to get to those because this is a time where you all can ask questions. And let me see. Yes. And so dissociative identity disorder, the DSM, the book we use to diagnose, it changed multiple personality disorder to dissociative identity disorder. That was a better way to describe things. So there used to be words like there used to be certain words that we don't use anymore. Intellectual disability is what we use. And so that was just a change in that name. Hello, welcome. I adore Lawyer You Know. Emily D. Baker, she is live right now. I was watching her coverage of Murdaugh, and I won't be talking about that today. But with this verdict, and I did watch the family talk, and I thought that Gannon's mom, her, like, everything just really, so I'm not going to play through that. I do have a link to the full video if you do want to watch what they said. The father also, he really made some very powerful, some very strong comments as well. He talked about him and Gannon's mom, that they apologized to one another because they kind of let Letecia get in the middle of their co-parenting relationship, and that really the person that Gannon should have been able to trust, he was not, and that home was not a good place for him. And so we are definitely going to talk about it. So I create content here. What I do here, it is strictly to give education. My private practice is fully booked. I do have a book, and I'll share some resources a little later. But yes, welcome. And so let's hop right in to the judge. To his comments, I thought they were very powerful, and I'm going to give some commentary as we go. I might have to mute because he says a word that YouTube doesn't like. And so I might have to, if I can catch it, I might have to mute a word, but let's watch this.
Parents' worst nightmare is getting a phone call letting them know that something has happened to their child. How much worse must that nightmare be when law enforcement asks not for a picture of your loved one, but rather DNA and dental records? I've also heard it said that one of the worst tragedies a parent can experience is to outlive a child.
It is. It really is.
I have known people, both professionally and personally, who have gone through that. It never leaves them, but the sharpness of the pain does diminish to some extent over time. I cannot fathom the pain Mr. Stauch and Ms. Bullard have experienced as a result of the defendant's actions. A sentence in a criminal case such as this will not change the fact that their son's life was taken from them, and no sentence I impose and nothing I say will ever change that fact. Ms. Stauch, you betrayed the person you loved enough to marry. You told your husband lies and took away someone he loved. You took away every day that Mr. Stauch or Ms. Bullard could have had with their son. When you take a life, regardless of how you do that, you forever alter the future. Neither Mr. Stauch nor Ms. Bullard will ever see their son graduate from high school, go through the joy
And within counseling, within therapy, we call that traumatic grief, that there are certain types of loss that are just different. I have worked with people that have experienced this type of loss, and it was due to a medical condition, and they were able to prepare. Something like this that comes out of nowhere like this, that type of grief, it is different. And I do encourage you all to take care of your mental health as you all watch. It is totally okay if you need to come back. The judge, but his words are very powerful. And I really think he did Gannon's memory a tremendous justice. Like he really did a really good job. Let's keep going.
and the pain of that first love or get married. They will never know what kind of impact their son may have had on the world if only he had lived to become an adult. And had Gannon's body not been found, they never would have known what happened to Gannon. They would always have had a lingering doubt about what happened to Gannon. And I cannot imagine the pain and sense of loss associated with that. You betrayed your daughter, Harley Hunt.
This part.
I cannot imagine the emotional impact that you have had on her due to your selfish and calculated actions. This is a young woman that trusted you to put her interests above yours. This is a young woman who believed in you and believed you were innocent of this crime right up until the time that you pled not guilty by reason of insanity. And she still loves you. That's natural for a child, and it doesn't matter how much older they get. You were supposed to protect her. I cannot imagine the guilt she feels or the therapy that she will need to address your betrayal.
And last stream, so the last office hours I did on Saturday, somebody asked, what do I think Harley will need and what did I think Lena would need moving forward? And specifically for Harley, there can be this bit of a trauma bond. Like there can be, some people mentioned it in the comments that you can start to identify with the very person that is causing you harm. And that is a survival thing. That is her mom, and she will have to go through life and cope with these things. I do hope that she is surrounded by a community and that she does find a really, if she's not in therapy, that she does find a really good therapist. Often people in helping fields, they get into helping fields because of their own pain. I will tell anybody, if I had a good experience with my middle school guidance counselor, I wouldn't be a psychologist. I had a horrible experience with a guidance counselor, and I knew, I was like, I could do your job way better. And I wanted to make sure that kids and teens had a safe place where if something wasn't okay, that they could feel safe enough to tell someone. And the lady was just doing it, but she was bad at her job. And so I truly do, because helpers need help too. And so I do my work. We are talking about Mental Health Awareness Month. That is May. And I love, later on, the judge is going to talk about the harm that she caused, that Letecia caused to mental health, trying to feign some serious mental illness that she does not have. And so let's keep going. Thank you, Complex Lit. Yes, Stockholm syndrome. And I have a whole video, because I think you asked, because I have a whole video explaining dissociative identity disorder and dissociation, because there's a big spectrum of dissociation and dissociative identity disorder that you can definitely check out.
There is no evidence that she had anything to do with the murder or your cover-up of it, but some people still think that she is somehow involved.
I've seen that in my comments.
She wasn't.
I tried to delete it when I saw it.
The incredible strength of will and courage that it took for her to come in and testify is amazing to me. But she did it because, as she said, it was the right thing to do. And while thankfully she didn't testify, let's not forget about Lena.
Yeah.
You betrayed her too. You took her brother from her and forever altered her family dynamics. She will always wonder who she can trust and will always feel that loss. She was there the day you killed Gannon. His body was still in the house when she got back from school. At some point, you even claimed this 8-year-old girl helped you move her brother's body from the basement to the back of your car. That's just simply not true. As she gets older, Lena is going to want to know more, and she's going to want to know if there was something that she could have done to prevent this.
Yeah. I wanted to make a note about Lena's age, that anytime kids experience a major transition, so the parents divorce, or so 7 to about 9 or 10, that's a developmental stage where they think they can make things happen. That's where kids think, they can make it snow, they can affect the weather. They have a bit of normal magical thinking. And so I do think that later on, because sometimes this type of grief, things can pop up later. And so if I was able to give Al any advice, it would be to make sure those teenage years might be kind of hard. And then going into adulthood, that transition might be difficult. And I work with trauma survivors. That is a part of my practice. And I'm glad that the judge did say that. I wanted to get to a comment because somebody asked, what do I think about Letecia not showing any emotion the whole trial? And the emotion I saw was anger. At times she looked bored. At times she looked, when Dr. Lewis was up, she was very attentive. She was kind of looking, she has this odd look. It's that look right before she, like, it was kind of it felt sinister to me. That was kind of what I got from it. And I do think that, I don't know if there was a part of her that enjoyed this being all about her. Like, I struggle to understand her, because she doesn't seem sorry at all. She doesn't show an ounce of remorse. And some people were in the comments because some of her past criminal acts didn't come into court, and I don't know how much of that was fully known. Some records were likely sealed. I don't know why some things didn't come into court, but it just, the emotional disconnect she had. People also talked about how relaxed she looked. I wonder if she's still taking the same medications, if she was given the hydroxyzine or something, if she was given something to kind of calm her before. I wonder. I don't know for sure, but I would wonder if that happened. Let me just scan the comments real quick. All right, let's keep going.
I hope she comes to realize that she has no fault in all of this. You betrayed your stepson, and you took his life. You took away everything he was and everything he could ever become. I can't imagine the terror and confusion that he must have felt in the last moments of his life when he knew his life was being taken by someone he trusted to protect it. Your attempt to raise the claim that you did this because of your adverse childhood is also a betrayal of people that have mental health issues.
Yes.
It is no secret that there is a large part of our population that has mental health issues. It's also no secret that our country and our health system could do a much better job addressing mental health issues than it does. However, the number of people with mental health issues who become violent is small.
It really is.
And the number who become murderers is smaller still.
Yeah.
Your claim that a mental health issue caused the murder in this case is a disservice to all those who struggle with mental health issues every day. This isn't the first case I have presided over in which sanity or a mental condition of the defendant has been raised as a defense. I have had cases where the defendant's mental condition caused the defendant to act out in a certain fashion. But even in those cases, I have never seen conduct like this. I understand the claim of dissociative identity disorder. I have seen something resembling that, and I have seen defendants with schizophrenic disorders. I can understand those. What I have seen is that the mental condition causes the person to act a certain way, and when they realize what they did,
Yes.
they are astonished by what happened, or they have no memory of what happened. Your claim is that it was another personality that murdered Gannon, but there is no time during the minutes, hours, and days following the murder where Letecia came out and wondered, gee, why am I carrying a body around in my luggage? That just isn't credible. You knew what you were doing. You made a number of clear and conscious decisions to cover or disguise what you had done. Claiming a lack of motive is a common defense tactic, and it can be a sound strategy. The truth is, however, that it only takes a moment to make a bad decision that results in disastrous consequences. And oftentimes, we never know why a defendant chose a particular course of action. However, that does not mean that they did not intend to undertake a course of action. Sometimes, as in this case, the likely explanation is anger.
Yeah.
An 11-year-old boy with burns who feels that he's not being taken care of.
I wonder if the burns, because people have mentioned, I wonder if that was her first attempt to really harm him. And I don't think she felt bad. Like an 11-year-old boy playing with candles, and not just, so I have worked with so I believe gender is a spectrum, but he didn't seem like he would play with candles. That whole story just seems very wrong. And I love, somebody mentioned earlier, if something's not okay, please tell. When I work with kids and teens, I say, because sometimes you tell one person and they don't believe you. Keep telling until you're safe. Keep saying it. This judge was phenomenal. Sarah, I agree. I believe it was jealousy. He loved his mom. And I think, I forget if it was Al that talked about how much of a mama's boy he was, and she was not able to have that. I believe there's another, based on the credentials, I believe that as LPC supervisor, yes, another mental health professional. And so her diagnoses by the other professionals was borderline personality features, narcissistic features, and they didn't have enough to go with antisocial, and a lot of people felt antisocial was definitely there. Somebody else mentioned, because I do work with individuals with borderline personality disorder, and they often do show remorse. The lack of remorse might be more the narcissistic personality disorder, and that's where these things really can be a spectrum. I don't think she fit neatly into any one thing, and the rejection, fear of rejection, needing to be the best, that I love you, I hate you thing, that seemed to be more characteristic of her borderline features. And that often comes from a very insecure attachment place. Narcissistic features often come from a very insecure sense of self. So the narcissist's secret is that they are incredibly insecure, and any little thing can completely change how they think and feel. And so they're constantly having to, I sometimes use the word peacock, they're constantly having to make themselves look bigger, better, and greater. And with the Alec Murdaugh trial, because I saw a lot of narcissistic features with him as well, that can a narcissist really love? And a narcissist love, the issue that comes is that it's through their lens and it's completely based on them. It's not based on the other person at all. And so I don't know. So I think, oh, rage. Yeah. And I was trying to do this one. Do I think she didn't feel any emotion? I think she didn't feel emotions about things that weren't tied to her, because she was very concerned. Like, y'all remember the audio tapes of her screaming and yelling at Al while about him not being concerned about her and her safety while he's trying to look for his son. And he's likely knowing she knows exactly what happened. And that's what Al said in his testimony, that he knew she had something to do with it, and that she knew more. And so the histrionic, borderline, all those features, that is what we call cluster B personality traits. Anyone that I work with. So I try to talk about this from a balance perspective. Anyone I work with those types of features, so this doesn't excuse anything. They often have very traumatic past, and if those things aren't addressed, it can cause some issues down the road, and those things are incredibly treatable. And so yes. Hello, not sure if you answer this. I thought PDs, personality disorders, are diagnosed as general and then specified with traits. And so that is what the Psychologist did. So they did a specified personality disorder with borderline and narcissistic traits. That was the diagnoses that Dr. Grimmett and then also Dr. Torres and Dr. Gray. Those were the diagnoses that they gave. Let's keep going.
An 11-year-old boy on the verge of being a teenager. Those of us who have lived through people or kids with that were teenagers, we know how that is.
They're going to be oppositional.
It is not hard to imagine Gannon saying something, "You're not my mom. I want my mom. I want my dad." And that would be enough to make you really angry. But anger is not an excuse. A defendant is responsible for the choices they made and the actions they undertook, even though those choices arose out of or were motivated by anger. It's clear that you hated and were jealous of Landon Bullard. You saw yourself as a better mother than she was.
She's not.
It's clear from the evidence that you had some resentment from being left with Mr. Stauch's children. It's clear you had some resentment toward Mr. Stauch because he traveled as part of his job. Some of that manifested as early as Al's assignment in Alaska when you made allegations against the people in his unit. That caused Al to have to return from Alaska. And in one of the phone calls that were played for the jury, you talked about having to take care of his kids while he was away, and what a good mother you were. It's clear you felt trapped. You wanted out. You were searching for a new job and a new location in Florida. Mr. Stauch had been gone on his new assignment for less than 2 days when the fire in the basement occurred. I can imagine that you saw your whole future consisting of taking care of Mr. Stauch's children while he was off doing his thing, and that's not the future that you wanted. I can imagine Gannon at some point after he sustained his burns telling you wanted his real mom, and how that comment would have made you angry. You took your frustration and anger for the marriage, the child care, the absence of Al, and even living in Colorado. You took all of that out on Gannon. The evidence suggests.
Okay, so somebody asked what happened in Alaska. And from my understanding, Jennifer M., what happened in Alaska. So Al was stationed in Alaska, and it's my understanding that Letecia and Harley moved to South Carolina, I think, and they would go out to Alaska, I think once a month. Letecia refused to move to Alaska. That was my understanding. I heard most of that during Harley's testimony. I did not watch this was a long trial, and I was just waiting for the mental health experts and for the mental health side. The videos were incredibly difficult. The videos of Letecia, because those were incredibly difficult to watch. And so it's my understanding that she was very resentful. And I forget where Al was stationed after that, but she did not fully move to Alaska with him, and she didn't stay there with him. Even the fact when Harley was talking about that periodically she would get upset with him, and that's why Harley, she thought that them driving, that they were eventually going to go back, because that's what had always happened. Like they would get mad, and then they would make up on the phone, and then they would go back. And that did not happen. And so let's keep going.
Suggest you first stabbed Gannon repeatedly, 18 times. Based on the number of defensive wounds, he was clearly conscious for some of that. He was certainly gravely wounded. And chillingly, it would also explain how you were able to mimic the sound of Gannon breathing in one of your sessions with Dr. Lewis. Those were probably close to his last breaths. He was dying but not dead. The evidence could also lead one to conclude that he either fell or rolled off the bed where you shot him in the head and then beat him with the butt of a gun or a baseball bat. That would explain the blood found at different levels on the walls in Gannon's bedroom.
This is incredibly, incredibly difficult to watch. Thank you for the membership. You are member number 2. And once again, this testimony, it gets difficult. I am so glad that he said all of this. If we can use essay instead of typing it out, sometimes things get flagged. And so I definitely won't raise the comment if it has it fully typed out. Also, that can be a bit of a trigger warning for anybody in the chat that has experienced anything. And so the judge is going to use the R word that I'm going to try to find, and I'm going to try to mute it. If I can't mute it, that's just a warning that word is coming up. Okay.
I'm also reminded of the look you had on your face when you slipped your handcuffs while being transported back to Colorado and attacked Deputy James. I shudder to think that that was probably the last thing that Gannon saw before he died. You have shown no remorse.
None.
Throughout this process. Instead, you've made a choice to build a web of lies. When you gave an interview to Detective Jessica Bethel on January 29 of 2020, you lied to her about Gannon running away and that he was actually taken by a guy named Eduardo. When you explained that to Detective Bethel, you said you needed to lie because you didn't want to face the consequences. You told her that you were trying to come up with a plan about what you should do. And finally, you told her you really thought you could fix this. I think that's true. You lied because you didn't want to face the consequences. Yeah. You needed to come up with a plan to fix this, and that plan involved covering up what you had done. It involved lie upon lie. But you slipped up at various points and let kernels of truth escape. In one conversation with Mr. Stauch, you told him the FBI needed to close the borders of Colorado, needed to close I-95.
I missed that part.
I-95 doesn't go through Colorado. It's an interstate that runs along the entire eastern seaboard. It's also not far from where you dumped Gannon's body. When questioned by Detective Bethel, you told her that Mr. Stauch might also make up some kind of story about you coming at him with a knife. You said you would never use a knife like that. Yet Gannon was stabbed 18 times. Your actions in this case also show a very conscious attempt to avoid responsibility in this case.
Yeah.
You started out with the story that Gannon had run away. You gave some hints that it might be related to bath salts or drug use by Gannon. You stayed with that story until you were called into EPSO for an interview. You knew they weren't going to buy the story that Gannon ran away. Then you came up with the abduction. And you stayed with some iteration of that for a long time. But all of those versions had one thing in common. You were always the victim. In one, you're beaten and raped, and Gannon was. In one, someone stole Gannon out of a truck in the parking lot. In another, you let someone drive Gannon to a hospital to take care of a head injury that he had after falling off a bike. In all of them, you could claim it wasn't your fault. You were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Then you got arrested. You stuck to the story that it was someone else that took Gannon. During the hours that you spoke with Special Agent Grusing, he told you he thought sometimes good people do bad things and sometimes it's an accident. Then they found Gannon's body. Then you saw the mountain of evidence against you. And this is a mountain the size of Everest. What was your position after that? Well, it was an accident. And you, Letecia, didn't even do it. It was Maria Sanchez. You carefully crafted your new story to continue to avoid responsibility. It also allowed you to take advantage of the out that Mr. Grusing and Mr. Stauch suggested much, much earlier when they asked you if this was an accident. Now it was an accident. Your Maria Sanchez personality shot Gannon by mistake because she thought he was an intruder in a cape. Multiple personalities is not credible in this setting, as regardless of how many personalities you have, you only have one body. I have presided over cases where a mental disease or defect prevented a defendant from remembering the course of events, including the commission of the crime. Without exception, those defendants have been terrified when contacted by law enforcement because there was a period of time in their lives that they could not account for. Their body may have sustained an injury, and they don't know how it happened. They may have some new object in their house or on their person, and they have no idea where they got it from. We all have free will, and we all make choices based on that free will. The people who suffer from the mental disorder you claim are terrified because their free will has been taken from them, and they are being subjected to things and experiences they don't understand and don't have any recollection.
Exactly. So true dissociative identity disorder. And I've had some people in the comments of some of the videos that that say they've been diagnosed with DID, and that condition, it is extremely distressing. She seemed to smile and be happy and that's what some of the forensic evaluators noted, that her affect was off, that she seemed almost happy to be there. She seems to like to make up stories. But I think and that's where those narcissistic traits, I think, come in, that she thinks she's smarter than everyone else and that she can talk her way out of this. And in this situation, she definitely could not. And I'm so glad. And somebody mentioned, and I wanted to, that because somebody asked about narcissistic rage and blind rage. And I've seen this, that an individual with narcissism, they can't take feedback. Feedback is taken as criticism, and they can never admit that they're wrong. And that's when gaslighting comes in. And now everybody, so narcissism is a spectrum. So somebody can have narcissistic traits and not meet criteria for narcissistic personality disorder. I also follow a no, I think he's a social worker, but on TikTok, and he talks about narcissistically defended, that some people in conflict, they kind of have some narcissistic traits. They often have a narcissistic parent, and that sometimes in the midst of conflict that people can be narcissistically defended. But and I'm going to start any questions. If you have a question, make sure to put that question up there, and we are going to get to that. I have a hard stop at 3 p.m. So I am Eastern, so I have about 25 more minutes to stream, and but we're almost through the judge's sentencing. He just wrapped things up in a way where I was just like, yes, everything that I had been thinking, like he really just wrapped the case up in this beautiful way. Similar, so I love the judge from the Murdaugh trial. I thought he did a phenomenal job. I did a reaction video to his sentencing as well. And then there have been a few other judges that I've shared some of the things that they mentioned.
Recollection of, you didn't behave anything like that. One of the purposes is to impose an appropriate sentence for the criminal conduct that occurred. Another purpose is to punish an offender by imposing a sentence that takes into account the seriousness of the offense. Yet another purpose of sentencing is to prevent crime and promote respect for the law by providing an effective deterrent to others likely to commit a similar offense. Anyone who's been in my courtroom before knows that I've said sentencings are the most difficult thing that I do. That's especially true in cases where someone has lost his or her life. Nothing I or the law can do will ever bring that person back. I have handled hundreds, if not thousands, of criminal cases over the years. I think at this point in my career, I've presided over something like 200 jury trials. I've sentenced hundreds more defendants pursuant to plea agreements. This is not the first murder case that has come before me. This is not the first case I have presided over which involves harm to a child. This is not the first case I have had where a person who was in an unhappy marriage committed a crime. Sadly, statistically, there is a high correlation between violent acts, including murders, and family members.
Sadly.
I have had a number of cases which have demonstrated one person's capacity for cruelty toward another human being. I can, however, say without hesitation that the facts in this case are the most horrific I have ever seen. Your conduct in this case deserves the maximum punishment that I can impose under Colorado law. As such, with respect to the charge of first-degree murder after deliberation, I remand you to the custody of the Colorado Department of Corrections for the remainder of your life with no possibility of parole. With respect to the charge of murder in the first degree of a child under 12 by a person in a position of trust, I remand you to the custody of the Colorado Department of Corrections for the remainder of your life with no possibility of parole. Those two sentences will merge. If you have questions about that, you can ask your attorneys. With respect to the charge of tampering with a deceased human body, I'm also going to sentence you to 12 years, followed by a 3-year period of parole. That sentence is to be consecutive to the life sentences that I've already imposed. With respect to tampering with physical evidence, I'm going to impose an 18-month sentence. That sentence is also consecutive to the sentences for the murder charges that I have imposed. I also understand, with the consent of the prosecution, and I'm assuming no objection from the defense, that I will dismiss all the charges in 20 CR 3170, close that out subject to restitution, give the people 49 days for restitution, 14 days for response, and if there's an issue, we will set it within the 90 days, from. I think that resolves all outstanding matters. Is there anything else that the prosecution wishes for me to address?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Defense?
Yes.
Court will be in recess.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. And that I was very impressed with the judge. I was very impressed with the prosecution. Um, with the Alec Murdaugh trial, the prosecution was all over. Like they were just all over the place. I forget the last charge. If the chat knows which charge was dismissed, I am not sure. Questions. I'm gonna star. So I learned how to do some things in StreamYard. So y'all, I have been a YouTube creator for a while. My channel has gained traction in the last few months. And so I don't only do court stuff, I do cover other things as well. If you prefer to just watch the court stuff, I have a court playlist. But I also do general anxiety videos. I do videos on sadness. I do parenting stuff. And so I will always sprinkle in a little bit of everything. This is not, I really want to make mental health information accessible. I get calls all the time, people looking for services, looking for help, and that can be a really, really difficult thing to do. So let me go through some of the things. And because somebody mentioned that often, I think I might have shared that one, that often narcissists, they don't have that. Question from Ray. What do you think about the continuous self-victimization? Yes. Yes. So this so she constantly needed to be the victim, because even Al was like, I can't find my son, and she's like, what about me? Like, ooh, like it was so difficult to watch. She did not put anybody above herself and only what she wanted. I think in her mind she knew that their only hope was Dr. Lewis, and Dr. Lewis did a terrible job. I've watched some other streamers talk about her, and I guess she has a history of getting combative on the stand sometimes. I do not believe Dr. Lewis has dementia or anything. I think she is very fixed on dissociative identity disorder. I thought it was interesting that the clinic she was at, when she was there, 80% of people had DID, and then she left. And if I'm remembering correctly, I think the numbers dropped by like half or something. That is all very, very problematic. And so I do think her constant need to be the victim, that was part of her narcissism. It was part of the what about me? It's that situation where it's like she constantly had to have a bigger and better story. And she probably had compulsive and pathological lying. So compulsive lying is where somebody just lies, just like, ooh, like they just lie about anything. Pathological often has a reason. They're trying to get something. It can come off a bit more. The word that comes to mind is manipulative. And so another question, do I think she has felt massive humiliation? I don't know that she can. Like, I hate to like, I don't think she can feel like, I don't think she felt bad. I don't know that, because in her mind, she thinks she's great. And that can be a protective factor. I don't think she feels bad about any of this at all. I don't think she sees exactly what all this has done. Thank you, Lisa, for joining the membership. And as that membership grows, I will eventually do behind the scenes member things. So normally when I record, so I have a bit of a stutter, y'all will hear that. I also sometimes I have trouble reading and talking at the same time. I have a processing issue, which is why I love Emily D. Baker, because she was the first streamer I saw that was just so honest about like, hey, don't type in all caps. My brain can't, like, it's harder for me to read that. And so I don't want to get, defamation is a real thing. So I question her methods. So this is me being political. I would not send my family member to her. It's all very, very problematic. And so Oh, wow. So I didn't realize that she might have charges in Kansas for what she did for attacking that officer. They might decide to drop those charges, or she might agree to a less because she's going to be in jail for the rest of her because trials take resources. So the taxpayers pay. So the taxpayers in Colorado paid for Dr. Lewis's testimony, and so sometimes I wonder if they might drop some of that. I also followed the Christmas Day. Sometimes I forget his name, but Daryl Brooks. I followed his case as well. Oh, and so I think you click join. Sorry, I clicked the wrong one. About becoming a member, I think on YouTube there's like a join. It's like a monthly subscription. You don't have to do it. If y'all would like to support me, support my channel, there are lots of different ways to do that. Let me show you. So I have a link to a bunch of different self-help resources. So if somebody is the book I mentioned for Harley, The Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. Here is mine, Turning Crisis into Clarity. But this is an affiliate link that I have with a ton of different self-help books. I also have a parenting section as well. And so for anybody that's looking for parenting resources, I will tell you, for any parents out there, let's talk about body boundaries, consent, and respect. That is one of my favorite books to go over with kids and teens, that talks about what consent is. And it just does a really good job explaining those things. And so that's that. Let me see. Oh, thank you, Sarah Adams. No, y'all are out here helping my little stream. Dr. Barry, I would be interested in your comments about the note. Oh, yes. Okay, let me see. I took notes on Lena's statement, and let me just find that. And the gist of it was Lena said, I think it's family, don't do that to family, I think. So a lot of people talked about Al and his new wife. I am happy for him. I guess his new wife, I wonder if they met in a grief support group. Um, because they talked about she has lost a son as well, and they have a child together. A child can never replace a child, so that can never ever happen. And uh, Al also talked about having a father that harmed him, and that he never wanted his kids to be in that type of situation, and that he saw his father arrested in handcuffs. Like, that was, I hadn't heard some of those things, and hearing him talk about peace, hope, and faith. I thought that was just very, very interesting. And Lena's statement was, let me see, wait a minute, let me find it. You should not do that to people, especially your stepkids. It's never all right to do these things. And I really just, I'm glad Lena was able to stay out of it. She is now 11, I believe. And so, okay, the charges against the officer were dropped. That makes sense. Um, and so, but I'm glad they were able to keep Lena out of it. Let me just scroll through the comments. I thought it was. Oh, so some people are really good. Some people, they're processing. So some people are really good at reading. And so I likely have undiagnosed ADHD. We'll see if I go on ahead and get, I supplement with coffee. Like, that's how, mine is mild. So I've known since grad school that I do have ADHD. Yeah. And then if it ever starts getting in my way, where like, but I really relate to neurodivergent people. I really do. I work with a lot of kids that have, and teens, and some adults that have autism. And so yeah. Yes, if you're on iPhone, you might not see the join button. I did not know that. Thank you, Ray. I did not know that. Let me just keep going through these. They did meet. They met at a grief support group. That makes sense. Oh, so Patricia made an interesting thing that anytime, and I saw that any testimony that was making her look bad, I saw her kind of do that. And everybody was watching her reactions. Um, she just reminds me a little bit of the Alec Murdaugh stuff because he also didn't have any reaction to the guilty verdict. Excuse me. His jury came back in 3 hours. His jury did a straw poll. His jury did not take long at all. And I really commend the jury for the work they did and the time they took. I agree. Lena, just lots of blue hearts and love for Lena. That really does break my heart, especially if she was involved at all. And she's so young, she might not remember. That might have been a really traumatic night for her, and there might be some things that she doesn't remember. And so okay, so somebody says if you're on an iPhone you have to go to a website to join. um let me see. So, okay, let's talk about ADHD. So, ADHD is the prefrontal cortex, the front part of the brain doesn't work the way it's supposed to. And that's where there are things like exercise, there are things that can help. But for some people, medication is incredibly helpful. Some people just take the medicine like when they work and they don't have to take it on weekends. Some people, they need to take it every day. And so I'm very much a do what you need to do for you. And so you watched The Lawyer You Know, and Emily popped in. Yes. So I was in that stream last night. So yesterday, I think it was about like 4 o'clock or so. I was in that stream. We all said hi to Emily D. Baker, and she said hi to the chat. I really, really love LawTube. LawTube is phenomenal. Do you all have any last questions for me? Please let me know. This case was incredibly difficult to watch. Um, you all will sometimes see some of my ADHD excitement. So I love streamers that are authentic and that show their true selves. I will tell y'all. So this part of my office looks great. If I just pan the like all the mess is on this side off camera. Okay. So, and thank you. The artwork, I have that in my Amazon store. So I got it right on Amazon. It wasn't that expensive. Y'all can tell which, if I'm streaming from my work office or if I'm streaming from home. My work office has a big tree. And this is my home work office. This is my home studio. So I have better lighting and stuff for home. But sometimes schedule wise, I need to stream from the office. This is my highest viewed stream ever. So thank you all for watching. Thank you all for engaging. I truly appreciate each and every one. I believe in community. So I do this to build community, to answer your questions. And that's why I call this channel Dr. Barry Responds. Now, I can't help you individually, like ethically, that crosses a boundary. But I can give general tips, general advice. And so if y'all are ever like, can you do a video on this? And so KPM, I try. So I have within the last 2-3 years, I have found my authentic self. Where it's just like I have no more F's to give. I just don't like, it's just I'm gonna be me. If people don't like it, if people like people, you do you. But I am so glad. I think there's a community for everyone. I am weird. So there's on my last office hours, I got my first super chat, and then I got a second super chat, and I said super chat. I think I said I'm weird. I am. I think weird is awesome. I work with kids and teens, and I really talk about the fact that like be you, do you, because some people just aren't. I could be exactly what people want, and people still not like it. So, and then I'd be hurting. So I'm just gonna be me. Do you do a stream about how to choose a career in psych? So the thing I'll tell you about choosing a specific thing in psychology. So I initially chose I initially chose, what's the word, to work with kids and families. And then I realized, ooh, helping the adults can help the family. And so I have shifted. So whatever you start with, psychology is very fluid. And I know people that started in forensic psych and now they switched more to clinical. I don't believe that everybody has to get a doctorate. I have phenomenal LPC master's level with licensed social workers. I have some amazing therapists that I've connected with online and then also in real life as well. And I will tell y'all again, I talk about these things here because my partner does not talk about any of these things. He doesn't understand. He doesn't watch these things. And so I really, really love being able to share those things here. Phoenix Rising, normal. Like it's just like people that don't have like a little, like that just aren't a little like I really, really love being able. And somebody else asked about Andrea Yates, and there was a mental health professional that I think evaluated her. It was a really long time ago. And there are a lot of other trials. So I am waiting to see with Lori Vallow if they are going to have a mental health expert. In her state, there isn't a insanity defense, but I think they're going to try to bring mental health up as a thing. And so I would like to stay more current. I might do it on one of the office hours. So talk about Andrea Yates on one of the office hours. We will see. No promises, but we will see. I did look up the case, and so if earlier in a stream, if you're like, "Hey, what are your thoughts on this case?" Somebody, I forget which person it was, but they were found guilty by reason of insanity, and they were given the option to come out of the state hospital, and they actually said, "No, I want to. This is where I belong. This is where I want to stay." And it was a woman. The woman that she had 5 kids and there was water involved. And so that individual was able to possibly, okay, good, Yates. So yeah, she had the potential. So I might talk about that. Talk about the fact that she was eligible to be released. And she was like, no, I want to stay in the state hospital. And yeah. Um, uh, I so appreciate each and every one of you. Please take care of yourselves. I need to hop off and get ready for my next meeting. I hope y'all enjoy the rest of your day.